know why I whispered that dramatically.
Oh, we're live.
We're live.
Including all of your dramatic whispers. I've got to get you showing up on the
Hello,
screen.
everyone.
They can hear you. This is the same thing every time, right? They can hear you, but they can't see.
Dramatic whispers before I appear on your screen.
Dramatic,
It's more of
yeah.
a stage whisper. I don't know how it would come across, and I'm like, hello, everyone.
Yeah. That was the
No, too quiet. The ASMR version of All Around Science.
That was the first demo of the George Michael song, Careless Whisper. It was Dramatic Whisper.
It went wah da 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 instead of wah da da da. It went up instead of down.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody,
You know
we're
what
here.
happened at work the other day?
Tell me.
Someone was I can't remember the context, but someone mentioned my podcast and this podcast right here that you're listening to right now. And someone stopped and thought for a minute, and she was like, I never thought of it about it, but Maura does have a nice voice. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Aw.
What, right? Isn't that nice? I was quite charmed. I guess
Well, you do.
it's not something you think about necessarily unless somebody has an exceptionally like an
Yeah.
exceptional voice in some way,
So,
very unique.
yeah. Would you describe my voice as deep?
Mhm.
So, I remember the first time that I was told that I have a deep voice was in college, and I didn't
Oh,
know that I had a deep voice, and
really?
that's what that reminds me of, that you say that. Like, I just never thought about it, right?
That's okay. Okay, that's interesting though because what like did your voice change early, and you were just like, ah, here we go. This is my new voice now. Because I feel like some boys, when their voice changes, they're very, very conscious of how it sounds.
I don't know. I don't remember. I
Yeah.
remember my voice cracking a lot for a short period of time, but I don't remember. I don't remember being aware of or thinking about my voice being different, though. I just don't
Hmm.
remember. Um, but I don't know. I've always been kind of like a go with the flow kind of. Like, I knew that that's something that was going to happen to me, so maybe I just kind of like said like, well, I guess this is happening, and I just didn't give it another thought, you
Yeah, yeah.
know?
Maybe some people are more self-conscious about it than others. I
Yeah.
think that there are definitely some who are not sure about
I,
that
s-
change.
I did sing in
But
musicals, so I'm trying to think of like
mm,
what was my awareness of my voice. I sang in musicals and I was baritone.
that's what I was gonna guess.
Yeah. So that's like on the deeper half, right?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
the lowest, but definitely low.
Yeah.
I myself am an alto.
Yeah.
Can't sing
Yeah.
high.
So I don't know what order they go in. There's what?
So the highest is soprano, and then
Soprano,
alto,
alto, baritone, bass.
tenor.
Oh, there's
I
tenor
think
in
it's
there.
tenor. Yeah, baritone bass. And there's like
Ah.
in betweens, like mezzo soprano. I think that's like in between alto and soprano.
Yeah.
I can sing tenor parts too sometimes, the higher ones.
I can sing falsetto.
I love a good falsetto.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some really great high pitched uh parts in specifically rock songs. I find that they really shine in those moments.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah,
Love a good falsetto.
I was singing well, I wasn't really singing. I was listening to the do you know the podcast Song Exploder?
No.
It's a good if you like music, well, I don't know, you kind of have to dig through. So okay, so the podcast Song Exploder is about they interview musicians about a, a song of theirs, and they get the
Okay.
whole history of how they break it down to the very beginning demo tapes and what were the things that inspired the song, the nitty gritty of how they made the song, and just the whole story of a single song, right?
Okay.
It's a cool podcast if you're into that kind of
That's
thing.
really cool. That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a ton of episodes on there that that I don't know anything. I don't know the musicians, and I don't know anything about. So I don't always listen to those ones. But I'll scroll through. They've got a long backlog. I'll scroll through and look for ones that I'm aware of. And anyway, I was the whole reason I bring this up is I was listening to the episode of they have an episode I for the four non blondes. Do you know that them? Four non blondes. They have that song what's up or what's going on. Um,
No.
you know. Anyway, there's a falsetto part in that song, and I started listening to that song. It's a popular song. You've probably heard it before, but I was singing along with it in the car, and it doesn't have a falsetto part. It's a female vocalist that gets
Oh, I
that gets
see.
very high. So when I'm singing it, I have to sing it in falsetto. So it's fun. It's fun.
Love it. Love it.
Let's acknowledge the chat room. Hello, chat room.
Hi, chat. Hello, chat.
We're doing this live for those of you listening later. We're doing this as our live episode.
There's talk of karaoke. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo,
That's
because Vegas
true.
is coming up
There's going to
soon.
be a karaoke night. And Logan's in the room. Logan was there last year when I did karaoke, and I at least the first half of the night I themed all of my songs. They were all 90s female vocalists.
Amazing. Amazing. Little Alanis Morissette,
Yeah.
Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah. Some
Love it.
Michelle Branch.
That's cool. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. How many songs did you sing? Were you hogging the stage, Bobby?
No, well, so we got there, me and Logan and Logan's wife Rebecca, we got there pretty much when the event started. And so people kind of trickle in. So there weren't a lot of people there when we got there. And also they have to break it up into we always get these private rooms, but so there's only so many people in a room, and then usually we end up getting 2 or 3 of them. And like it's fun because we all like, I don't know if you're supposed to do this but they let us at the place we were at, although we're going to a new place this time. Anyway, we would just all float between the rooms, whatever.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Love it.
So, but anyway, so there's only, like a dozen and a half people, in a room. Maybe you might be able to squeeze 20 people into a room. And so
Okay.
not
Okay.
everybody,
So you're not like a big stage.
Yeah, it's not. And not everybody sings either, so it's you get chances. You get
I'm sure I told you. I don't know if I told the world about my karaoke birthday party. My 40th birthday was a karaoke party.
Yeah, you told me that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, we had the same thing, rooms, and so we were there a couple hours, and I got many opportunities to sing. That's I just realized we have to pick a song to sing together. Perhaps several songs.
Yeah. Do we need to do a duet?
Obviously. Yeah. That's just, I mean, I think it's illegal for us not to. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
I don't
pick
really
a
want to
good
go
one.
to an American prison.
Yeah.
Let's pick a good one. Does Stephanie sing at all? Does she karaoke?
No. She loves being at karaoke, but she does not sing. So
yeah, she doesn't seem the karaoke singing type. Neither is my dear sweet husband. So
yeah.
So
yeah,
if
the 4 of us went to karaoke,
if
it
at
would
any
be
point
you and me
it would just be
singing and them watching.
They'd be like, just like talking about stuff, talking about medical stuff.
Stephanie loves to sing along, but she just sings along. She just sits and
not in
sings
front of
along.
people.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be so good. I would love to sing 9 to 5. Is that the name of the song?
Oh, the Dolly Parton song?
Yeah, that would be so funny. It's just really funny because I don't know, because that's not really what you do.
Let's see. Good karaoke song. Good karaoke duets. 100 greatest karaoke duets of all time. That's like the 100 only. Like, I hate these 100 lists, but it is Billboard. They probably.
I'm looking them up too.
Post Malone, nah. I won't know that. Oh, never mind. Can't. Oh wait, no. Okay, continue. There we go.
My list has Bring Me to Life by Evanescence on it. I just want to acknowledge that. Oh, that'd be so funny. Oh my gosh, it's on so many of them. Actually, I can see that.
Love is an
I can
open
I can
door.
see
The
that.
Frozen song. That's a good duet.
That is a good duet, but we can't be a
That's true.
love-ish song.
But
I don't want to do that.
every duet is most duets are like
You know what isn't? Bring Me to Life by
I don't know if
Evanescence.
I know the song Bring Me to
Are you kidding
Life. I probably do and I
Wake
just
me up inside. Wake me up inside.
I was born to live in the light.
Ah!
Holy cow, sorry.
What just happened there?
YouTube decided to start playing through us.
Weird.
Yeah. But anyway.
Disney. There's a lot of probably Disney songs that you could do that aren't love songs.
Oh, I bet I could ask ChatGPT. Let's figure it out. ChatGPT. Let's see how it does. Give me 10 duet karaoke songs that are not love songs. Let's see how it does. Absolutely. Here are 10 fun duet karaoke songs that, in bold, aren't love songs. Perfect for friends, siblings, or anyone who wants to avoid the romance vibes. Sounds like what we're
doing. Perfect.
Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Under Pressure. These aren't really duets. These are just the vocalists singing at the same time.
I would say Ain't No Mountain High Enough. There's some good harmonies in that one.
Yeah, I can't harmonize. Can you?
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm an alto who grew up in church. Nothing was set up for me, so I just had to learn how.
There's the no, I don't know most of these songs. I don't know them.
Okay, say a few more.
So the Empire State of Mind, Jay-Z and Alicia Keys, The Boy Is Mine, Brandy and Monica, Dumb Ways to Die, Tangerine Kitty. I don't even know who that is.
Dumb Ways to Die is really not a duet.
That's what I think a lot of these aren't. Like, What Does the Fox Say? That's
not. Although I think you could make it a good duet. Like if somebody's doing the sounds.
Sure. Tribute, Tenacious D. It's not. See, a lot of these aren't really duets. These are just like somebody backing up somebody, like like I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Angel by Shaggy.
Shaggy's got that voice, so that'd be fun.
If I had $1 million.
Yeah, that's Canadian too.
It is.
That's what we should do. Some Canadian song. Carly Rae Jepsen.
That's my theme. I'm gonna just do Canadian.
There you go. You got a lot to pick from.
There's some good Canadian music out there. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop silently reading duet karaoke songs because anyway, we'll have to figure something out because it must happen.
Yeah, that sounds like it's got to. I did just right before we came here, we just came from not we, but my family. You and I did not just come from this. My daughter Zoe had her first band performance. So.
Oh, what's she playing?
Clarinet.
Ooh, nice, very nice. A classic.
Yeah, she did great. The band did great. So
that's great to hear.
The thing she was
most
excited
to Zoe.
Yeah, the thing she was most excited about was it was all the band did a concert. So they did the 6th grade, the 7th grade, and then the 8th grade. She really enjoyed listening to the 7th and 8th graders. It actually got her really excited.
Oh, nice.
Because she literally said like, "Oh, I'll get to play." Like that's how I will sound if I stick with it in 7th and 8th grade. And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Yeah, She said, "I'm definitely staying in band because she like wants to be able to be a part of that." So
nice.
That was exciting.
In other kid musical news, my child starts the recorder as of Monday.
Ooh, that's fun. We got
that's happening
when our kids or when Zoe did the recorder in elementary school, the music teacher sent an email to all the parents apologizing in advance.
Really?
Yeah.
I did get an email. There was no apology.
Yeah. But
Oh well.
the recorder is, I think like this is the whole point, I think, to teach kids about music and also get them excited about music. And
Mm-hmm.
Zoe is a recorder success story, because she didn't
Nice.
care anything about it, but playing the recorder in elementary school is what made her want to play an instrument and join band in middle school.
Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to get 2 because if I don't, then it's gonna be 1 recorder and lots of fights. But then I'm gonna have to hear 2 recorders. Maybe there'll be a recorder zone.
Yeah. Like down the street. No, it really wasn't that bad. I enjoyed listening to them play around with it. Or not them. Kaylee hasn't done it yet, but I enjoyed listening to Zoe play around with it, even when it was bad. She was trying, so it was cool to see her trying and learning something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Logan says it was weird. It's weird to hear that there was an apology in our American school, but not in your Canadian one.
That's true. No, it was just like, you need to buy a recorder.
Yeah.
They'll cost $10. I was like, oh boy.
That's funny. Is this maybe the sorry is implied?
I mean, at the end of the day, he's had to send this email a few times, so he's probably like, you're fine.
Yeah, you'll live.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking up recorders. Okay, I gotta stop. I'm recording a podcast. I'm not shopping, and I'm not picking a karaoke song.
I'm recording a podcast, not shopping for recorders.
Hey. Yeah. Maybe I'll borrow his recorder and give you guys a little taste next.
There you go.
Next time we record.
I can still play a song on the recorder from back in my school age days.
What can you play?
I don't know how. What's the song? Da 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 da. That song?
Oh yeah.
I can play that. It's the only thing
I
can
learned.
play.
And who knows how horrible this was for my parents, but I figured out how to play Can You Feel the Love Tonight when I was playing the recorder.
That's very funny.
I guess it would have been like 5th grade when that movie was big. And then I just play it all the time. God, that must have been so annoying. Sorry, Mom and Dad.
I learned how to play. I don't remember where or when or how or why, but I learned on a piano. I learned how to play the Jurassic Park theme.
Amazing.
And so for like years, every time there was a piano around me, I would play the Jurassic Park theme.
Do you think you still could?
I don't think so.
That sounds like you'd need a little bit of, you need some practice to get up to speed on that.
It's not like the recorder.
You just pick that right back up.
Yeah,
I doubt I can play Can You Feel the Love Tonight anymore. Maybe I could figure it out. It's not a very complicated song, and it just hits like both ends of the octave, so you can play it on a recorder.
Yeah.
If you pick the right key.
I can also play a song on the trumpet. One song.
Oh yeah.
Huh. Yeah. It's like a band. It's like a marching band type song. It's like bump 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 ba bump bump bump.
Okay, yeah.
I can play that song.
Fun.
Bop, bop, bop. Boop, boop, boop.
Did you play trumpet in band?
For like a couple of months, and then I was like, "This isn't for me. Bye bye."
Oh, nice. I did not do band either.
No, not me. So.
Nope. I just sit around playing on my recorder.
Zoe wants to do honor band, and she claims that she wants to go all the way through to marching band in high school and everything.
That's tough.
Yeah. They don't have to take a PE class. It counts as a PE credit if they do marching band.
That doesn't surprise me because that sounds like a lot of
very
effort.
physical. Yeah, it's probably more
Right?
physical than taking PE.
Honestly, especially if you're one of those kids with the giant drums strapped to your belly.
Yeah. Boom,
Can you
boom,
imagine? Like,
boom.
I guess if you're doing that, you don't have to like breathe in a pattern. But like,
Yeah,
imagine just like
yeah.
marching around and you got a little flute. You're like,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I can't even imagine. That'd be
Well,
so
that's why they
hard.
have the whole practices during the summer and marching around and learning all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that could be super fun. Good for
Where,
her.
but I want to know, where do they get their? Because the other thing they do in PE is uh is sex ed.
Oh,
So I wonder where they get that
huh.
if they're not taking PE. Does the band
Yes,
teacher
those
teach it to
kids
you?
just don't. Those kids just don't learn it.
They gotta learn they gotta learn on the streets. That's
Yeah,
not good.
they just leave it to their parents for those kids. They
Yeah,
send a note home. They're like, we're not doing that.
yeah,
You do that. That's a phys ed thing. Hey, that's in gym class.
yeah. Do you guys learn that in public schools in Canada?
No, in health class.
Oh, but you have a health class.
You don't have a health class.
It's all rolled into physical
Got it.
education.
Got it.
It does health and I think it's even nowadays it's called health and physical education.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, no, it's a separate thing.
Yeah, when I was a
Separate
kid, it
thing.
was Zoe's learning so much more about health related stuff than I feel like we ever learned in PE, but it was only ever called physical education when I was in school. So,
Mm.
but maybe we learned about it. I don't know. I feel like they just didn't care as much when we were kids. It was like, here's the food pyramid. Now go run around the track a couple times.
If you have sex, you will get pregnant and die.
Yeah. That's how they
Everybody take a condom.
That's how they teach it here.
that
in
was
the
from Mean
South.
Girls.
Oh,
That's what they
I
did in
haven't
Mean
seen that
Girls.
movie. I want to see that movie.
You have never seen Mean Girls.
No.
I think you'd very much enjoy it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think I
It's
would
really
like
funny.
it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is very much how they teach it here in the American South. So
Yes,
I looked it up cuz we were sent the notice that I was coming up for Zoe in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, where are they? They went through some of that in elementary school, but it was really basic and not a lot of anything. But I know now that they're in middle school, there's a lot more that they're going to learn, right? And so I thought, my keyboard just made a noise. Did you hear that? Anyway,
That was your keyboard?
yeah, it slid it across the desk, and it's got rubber pads on the bottom, and it made a weird noise. Anyway, so I thought, okay, so I wonder what the curriculum's like, and I thought, I wonder if they've changed it, because when I was in school, it was very much abstinence education, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I thought, I wonder if we've become more progressive about, like sexual health education here, and the answer is no, we haven't. It's still
Wow,
abstinence
really?
forward.
It's
Yeah.
really wow.
Yep. But that's state by
All the
state.
same.
So
Right,
it depends. It depends on the state that you're in. So.
Right. Well, I was not I did not participate in that part of school. I was pulled out. So I don't know what it's
Yeah.
like here.
Yeah, Zoe's got friends whose parents pull them out for that, and that's very common here also because we live in the Bible Belt also. So.
That's right. Yeah, you would have I was like the only one
Oh,
every
okay. Yeah,
year.
no, that's very religious
Only
around
me.
here, so plenty of people do. I think it's still a minority of people that get pulled out. But
Well, if they're teaching abstinence anyway.
yeah, right.
Right?
So, yeah, well, they still learn other important things, I guess, but that part of it, it's not great. Not great.
Logan asked if I've seen the musical. I have.
The Mean Girls
And I bet
musical?
you there are the musical Mean Girls. Yes,
Yeah.
that is helpful context to have since you can't read it. You're just listening to this.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that I'm doing a podcast. Yeah, I have seen it. I saw it when it came to town a few months ago. So it is really awesome. It was great. It was great. And hi, Jamie.
Yes. Hi, Jamie.
Good to see more folks in the chat. Should we get on to the actual podcast? Then maybe I'll start remembering.
Yeah, let's do that. And do we have anything for the top of the show?
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything.
Okay. Neither do I.
Anyone in the chat have something?
Yeah. Hey, that's a good idea. What do you guys think we should talk about at the top of the show?
Love it.
This is our episode, every episode conversation we have.
I do. Well, I have something that could work if chat
if they don't have anything good,
comes up
you
empty.
got something.
Yeah.
Hey, Palmer's here. Tweep. We'll kill time by doing the thing we haven't done yet, listing everybody. Cyrenex, Logan's here. Jamie's here. And now Palmer's here. Excellent.
Good to see you, fine folks.
Talk about scientific advances you want to see in the next year.
Ooh, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much. I would have to put more thought into that, I think.
Yeah. That's a great question, though.
Yeah. We could mention this thing that we're not going to talk about that was everywhere in the news. You know what I'm talking about? The biggest science news of the year so far. The dire wolves. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, then this is perfect. I'll say that's what we'll talk about. Got it.
Okay, perfect.
That's the thing we'll do.
That's the biggest science news. Okay, I'm ready. Hey everyone, it's April 14th, 2025, and you're listening to All Around Science. My name's Maura Armstrong.
And I'm Bobby Frankenberger, and we are two huge fans of science here to get you caught up on what's going on in the world of science and just generally geek out about science stuff. Today we're doing a live show, so Maura, say hi to the live audience here.
Hi.
Here on the internet there. So
thanks. I like that you coached me. You're really helping me improve my
Maura,
podcasting
there is
skills.
a live audience. Please say hello.
Hello. Yeah, it's awesome to have a bunch of people with us as we record.
Yeah.
Helping us out, helping us, keep on track. I've been saying throughout our pre-show that I keep forgetting that we're recording a podcast. I feel like I'm just talking to you, Bobby, but maybe that'll create some podcast magic for us.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yeah. I asked you right before we started recording if you'd heard the biggest science news that's been dominating all the science news outlets. You must have been busy and not been following a lot of science news, because there's no way you wouldn't have seen the news about colossal biosciences bringing dire wolves back from extinction.
Okay, two things.
Yes.
Dire wolves were real?
That's what I said.
Like, how big were they? What's the? I guess there could have been super big wolves. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I did not know that dire wolves were actually real. I always thought that just D&D invented them. And
or they're just an old legend that, what if there was just a really big wolf?
Yeah, no, apparently dire wolves were a real thing. They were around about 11,500 years ago is when they died off.
Oh,
during that big extinction that happened that killed off a bunch of it was 11,500 years ago when this big mass extinction happened, and that's when all the really big like megafauna died, woolly mammoths died out, saber-toothed tigers died out, and then also dire wolves died out, and they were coexisting with gray wolves at the time, apparently. And they were just sort of a variant of gray wolves. Well, the news is that what you've been seeing in the headlines is that they've brought back the dire wolf, and even I said it that way. That's the sensational way to say it, but they didn't really do that. They didn't. A more accurate way to say it is that they've genetically modified gray wolves to hopefully have the physical characteristics of dire wolves. And they did it by altering mixing some of the gray wolf genome
Mhm.
with a couple of. They did add. So let me back up a little bit. They have successfully. We do have a mapped genome of the direwolf because we have fossils
The
of the
complete.
direwolf.
Okay. Okay.
So we do have a mapped genome of it, and when you compare it to a gray wolf's genome, they're about 99.5% similar. All right,
Okay.
so there are just a few differences because they're very closely related.
Mhm.
And so what they did was they went back and looked at those differences, and they did modify some of the gray wolf genome with some dire wolf segments, with some dire wolf genes, but not all. So they identified like 20 edits that needed to be made,
Okay.
and not all 20 of them were made with dire wolf genes. They did do some just selectively modified with some other gray wolf genes. So an example that they gave, they also haven't said a lot of the specific changes that they made, so we don't know which dire wolf genes and which gray wolf genes were added because it's all proprietary, right?
Mhm.
And it's all their secret. But they did use as an example that dire wolves were bigger than gray wolves. They were just big wolves.
Mhm.
Um, and what they did to make the dire wolf bigger, or the gray wolf bigger, is they took they modified the gene for size in a gray wolf to make it so it would be a very large gray wolf. But they used the gray wolf gene for size to make that change.
I see. I see.
So
So it's a remixed
it's sort of a remix,
gray
yeah.
dire wolf.
Yeah, so it's not really a dire wolf that they brought back. Because even if they had identified all the different parts, that 0.5%, I still think I do think if they were able to say that they took all of the different genes and replaced them with direwolf genes and then birthed that animal, I think you could call that a direwolf.
I suppose, yeah.
Some people might argue, but even that's not what they're doing is the point. So, but yeah, they did do
I
it. They made a bunch of gene edits. They put it inside of a dog as a surrogate, and then they birthed two pups back in 2024. They named them Romulus and Remus. Do you get the reference?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Rome's founders, Romulus, or
Mhm.
mythological founders of Rome. The story goes that Romulus and Remus were brothers that were raised by direwolves.
Mhm.
So they named him after that. And then they had a third one born at the beginning of this year, and they named that one Khaleesi. It was a girl,
Hmm.
after, the Song of Ice and Fire reference there, which that annoyed me because
That's not right.
she doesn't even have anything to do with direwolves in those
Yeah, what
books.
the heck? That's not I'm not no, don't do that.
They should have named it Sansa or something.
Right? Or
Right.
or there's a million better names. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just overall this kind of work, I find it's a little bit of a human vanity
It
project, it
makes me
feels like.
nervous also.
I really don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, especially because this is proprietary. If they were doing this and bringing out this knowledge and allowing it to be part of the common understanding and furthering our understanding of genetics, I'd feel more comfortable with it. But it feels like to me
Yeah.
sort of an exhibitionist, the sort of the old school zoo vibes. Like
Yeah.
zoos today have a very different mission than they once did. They used to be just collections of oddities in a lot of ways. That's kind of how zoos started, and so this feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that same vibe as well. There are a lot of critics, environmentalist critics
Yeah.
and stuff like that, who say that this is just not a good idea because whatever niche they did once fill doesn't exist anymore. And so they probably aren't doing any good. They might be, in fact, be doing harm by
Right?
bringing these back. And at the very least, it would be what you just described. They would be creating an animal that would sit in some zoo of oddities somewhere. And
Yeah.
and is that doing any good for the animal? No, it's just doing they
Or anyone
claim
at all. Who
yeah,
who benefits from this?
the company benefits from it.
Why? Why would I don't understand.
Because they make money. They have so many investors, very
I
famous
guess.
people that are very wealthy, all really interested in this. And I think it's very obvious that that they're making these choices for the types of things that they're trying to genetically modify. I think it's pretty obvious that they're making those choices in order to be flashy so that they can get more investors. They claim that what they're really doing here, they're very careful about the way they talk about this.
Yeah,
Like you need
yeah.
to. They're not they make a lot of soft environmental claims. They make a lot of soft kind of claims. What they really kind of say that they're doing is developing uh genet they're developing new technologies that will be able to be used to help with conservation of endangered species. That's what they claim.
Mm,
But they're doing it in this way, right? Like,
yeah.
and so maybe that's true. Maybe that's what they're gonna do. But I think time will tell, and that's why I say it makes me nervous, is because we kind of just have to trust them, and it's hard to trust them when they're being so like being really cagey about it, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, I don't know.
Well, that is I guess in some measure it's a pretty interesting project.
Yeah,
Uh even though I disagree with the way they're going about it.
sure, yeah,
Uh but yeah, I don't know how I missed that. I guess I haven't been reading a lot of science news lately, although I did find a very good tidbit. It's not
yeah.
even a tidbit. In fact, when you said the big science news everyone's talking about, I thought you were talking about the article I'm about
Oh,
to
tell
get
me.
into. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Nick. Evening.
If I'd made fake dire wolves, I'd be pretty cagey too, right?
They're
I don't
cute.
know.
If you see the pictures,
I
they're
bet
very
they're
cute.
adorable.
Yeah.
Bet they're adorable. All right, here we go. Here's another episode of more googling stuff that you can't see.
It's okay to do it as long as you pop the link in the chat. That's
Oh my
my
gosh, they're very cute.
yeah.
I can't though. YouTube won't let me.
Really?
I
Oh
don't
no,
know
I
if
can.
you can. I maybe it's because you're the person streaming and
You're just a lowly
I'm just a
observer.
lowly. I put it in. I don't know if that went through. Usually it doesn't.
No. There's got to be a way for me to make it so that you can
They're so beautiful. Oh my
very
gosh,
yeah,
it's
they're
true.
very
Oh
cute
my gosh,
animals.
they're so cute as tiny little puppies. Yeah, I guess that would do it. That would be why you do it. The cuteness.
Mhm. Mhm.
The cuteness.
Yeah, like they made I just what annoys me a little bit about it is they're always they're just always overselling what they're doing. Like
Hmm.
when they made the woolly mice, you remember that? Not too long ago.
Vaguely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple
I don't
weeks
know.
ago even they announced that they genetically engineered a mouse to have uh they called them woolly mice, but the way that they talked about it was they made it sound like because they're working on the woolly mammoth, right?
Yes, I know.
Yeah, that's the whole reason that they first came on the map, this colossal biosciences. But they made it with the woolly mouse. The way they talked about it, they made it sound like they had combined genes from the woolly mammoth into the mouse to make a woolly mouse. And they made some kind of hybrid between a woolly mammoth and a mouse. But that's not what they did at all.
They just
They just
made a mouse woolly.
modified the genes in the mouse for that regulate hair growth. Which is, I don't know why. I guess again they're just trying to make a flashy headline, so probably for investors. But like, I mean, just making those mice that way by modifying those genes, that's pretty cool by itself.
Here's the thing though. Yeah, it's cool, I guess. Again, vanity project.
Sure.
Don't investors need a return
Well,
at some
that's what
point?
I don't know what the return that they're promising is.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, who are they gonna sell woolly mammoths? Are they gonna sell direwolves?
oh
Like,
man,
how much do those go for?
they're gonna be like security
A
animals or
billion
something.
dollars each? Right? Like, I just it's just really yeah, anyway. Uh, I I will stay off. I will step down from my soapbox, and, we could move on to what I actually did cover, which is very cool. Um, yeah,
Good.
it's, I could go on about this for an annoyingly long time. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Francis Crick, do you know that guy?
Yeah, that's
One of your friend of yours?
the DNA double helix guy, right?
That's right. He is one of the scientists who famously used Rosalind Franklin's uncredited detailed imaging
Yeah,
of
that's
DNA
right.
to co-win a Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of DNA.
He did not co-win it with Rosalind Franklin, by the way.
Correct. Yes, that's a very important detail. He won it with another dude
Yes.
who did the same thing, and she did not get credited. So I mention her every time.
Yes.
I'm sure he's a great scientist, but
No, he's not. But
that's what happened.
we're not going into that. So
He's not a great scientist.
no, he's not
Anyway,
a great person. Let's just leave
back it
it
up,
there.
back it up, back it up. So, Francis Crick, he once said it would be impossible, this is a quote, to create an exact wiring diagram for a cubic millimeter of brain tissue and the way all its neurons are firing.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now, just just this past week, as of the recording of this podcast yesterday, a team of 150 scientists across multiple institutions have taken a step towards proving him wrong.
Oh.
Although, in his defense, it was not easy to map out exact wiring of a cubic millimeter of brain tissue is
Wow.
apparently very, very, very difficult to do. But on April 9th, 2025, as of yesterday, the recording of this podcast that was yesterday, 10 studies that stemmed from a single project
Hmm.
were published in Nature journals. They were all part of the Machine Intelligence from Cortical Networks project, known by its liberal acronym Microns. I'm not sure quite, I can't quite see how they got that, but Microns it is. And this project created an incredibly detailed wiring diagram of 1 cubic millimeter of a mouse brain.
Take that.
Ha
Crick.
ha! There you go, Crick. This is the most ambitious, successful brain mapping project yet.
Wow.
And this is something we talked about a few years ago. We talked about mapping part of a fruit fly brain.
Yeah.
In 2021. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool because at the time it was, the most they'd ever really done. They did a not I don't think the whole brain of the fruit fly, but a big chunk of it at least. And back then we were talking about machine learning as part of this whole equation. Machine learning was already in the picture.
Hmm.
And that helped them to figure out which neurons were connected to each other.
Right.
And I remember too, they had this online portal, this sort of setup where you could go and you could volunteer essentially to find connections between neurons. So you could go through their 3D imaging of this brain tissue and look at it and find places where they connect together.
Oh, okay.
So they were kind of crowdsourcing some of the work
Right.
because that's really complicated to do. It's sort of like if you just take a giant pot of spaghetti and just dump it on the floor.
Right.
And then you try to, without taking out the spaghetti and laying it end to end, try to figure out which spaghetti is touching each other And then you add in all of these connections, and then you've got a bunch of meatballs, if we're sticking with this analogy, and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of sauce everywhere. Like, it's really, really hard to do that if you can't get right in there, if you can't actually see the connections
Right.
from within. So this project is really important. The article I was reading, and of course it was put out by the people who did it, but they called it a watershed moment in neuroscience. This is a
Sure.
really important point in neuroscience. Um, and this project, the Microns project, it delved into connectivity, but more than that as well. And I want to talk about not necessarily what they discovered. There were some cool things, but just the operation of this study or these studies is really fascinating. And the mechanics of it is
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
Okay.
So, this is what they did. They had a mouse watch YouTube. And then they used a microscope to observe what was happening in this very specific region of its brain, 1 millimeter cubed.
Yeah.
This work was done by a team at Baylor College of Medicine and at Stanford University. So
Okay.
they had their mouse under a microscope somehow. I do not know how that works, but that's what they're doing. The mouse is watching mouse TV. They then took that section, that specific section of brain from that specific mouse, because now they had all this image of it moving and doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They took that section of brain, 1 millimeter cubed, and then the Allen Institute has the equipment to slice it into 25,000 slices.
Oh my gosh. 1 millimeter?
1 millimeter, 25,000 slices.
Wow.
I can't conceive of how that's possible. That seems completely impossible.
Yeah.
But they did. And then they took those ultra thin slices, every single one of these 25,000 ultra thin slices, and imaged them with electron microscopes.
You know what would have really sucked? If like they sliced them all up and then somebody opened the window and then like they just like a bunch of papers they just flew. Oh no.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's they had like a little gif of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this actually represented the real process, but it looks like when the slices come off, they go immediately into some sort of like medium, like liquid or gel medium.
Yeah.
So they're like instantly preserved, I guess. Electron microscopes too are awesome to be. Have you ever seen an electron microscope? Have you ever been in a room with one?
No, I have not.
They come in various sizes. You can get ones that are like the size of a desktop computer tower.
Mm.
They're not quite so precise, but I've seen ones. I got to tour a lab where the electron microscope took up the whole room, like the size of a
Wow.
bedroom or living room, and it's very steampunky. There's lots of like tubes and things connected to each other in ways that really evoke a steampunk kind of look. I mean, a few less rivets and screws, and a little bit more stainless steel and welding, but
Right.
it is very cool. Anyway, so they took these 25,000 slices, they imaged every single one of them with electron microscopes, and then they sent those images to a team at Princeton, who took them and rendered them into a 3D image. So this is how they created the largest wiring diagram and functional map of the brain that has ever been made. Now, they have both the information about how the neurons were firing from that initial recording, that initial viewing of the mouse's brain,
Yeah.
and then they have the physical space. So they're able to see how were these neurons that we see firing, where were they firing in this connected space?
Right.
And how can we interpret this signal and that signal? And that was where they used machine learning to figure out both the connections
Right.
with those 25,000 pieces and how they were firing in relation to that, what they see in the microscope. Um, within this space, this cubic millimeter, there are 200,000 cells,
Oh my gosh.
4 kilometers worth of axons, like the long skinny parts of neurons.
Jeez.
4 kilometers out of a millimeter squared. And this is the part where brains just go an order of magnitude beyond 500,000,000 synapses.
Wow. Two. So four. I'm trying to do some math. Quick math. 200,000 200,000 neurons. You said, right?
Cells.
Cells.
200,000 cells, not all of them were neurons.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it was 120,000 neurons.
Jeez. Still, and then
Ugh.
half a how many?
500,000,000.
Half a.
523,000,000 synapses.
So each neuron then has a lot of synapses.
Yeah, it's like 10 or something. I can't remember the number that is the average or whatever.
Wow.
But yes, each neuron branches out into multiple spaces and then
Yeah.
hits multiple neurons. So those connections are, it almost feels like they're infinite.
Yeah.
Like there's so many that the number almost doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
Wild. Absolutely wild. So you can see this. You can see the result of this work on YouTube. Um and of course the papers are out there too.
Mm-hmm.
I did not read all 10 of the papers.
Yeah.
Surprise. But like I said, I wanted to talk more about the process than the findings. But the findings were very cool. They did find they were able to discover some organizational and functional principles about brains.
Yeah.
They discovered some new types of cells. They figured out new ways to classify cells. One really interesting finding that they highlighted was a new understanding of the way that neurons inhibit action
Oh.
in the brain, which they kind of thought it was like an on-off switch, but it's more like a complex system of levers and dials that inhibit specific regions and sometimes specific types of cells.
Interesting.
So your brain has certain neurons that will send signals that say, slow down, do not be triggered by anything right now, neuron, it's okay, shh.
Yeah.
And that's an inhibitory action. um but it's quite targeted as to which parts of the brain are being inhibited, more than we thought. So it's a new moment for neuroscience. We're
Yeah.
entering a new space. The story is not just that some incredible findings have come to light, but also to have a data set like this opens up incredible possibilities for future research. All of this data is available. You can
Oh
go
wow.
and access it. But hang on a second, because I'm gonna give a pretty giant asterisk to that.
Oh, okay.
Because the data and wiring diagram takes up 1.6 petabytes.
Oh, I don't think I have that much space on my computer.
Yeah. So that is 1,600,000 gigabytes.
Right.
Or if you're a normie like me and you need that even further explained, that is 22 years of nonstop HD video.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. A petabyte is like you've got megabytes on your computer, and then this next step up is gigabytes, right? And then the next step up is terabytes.
indeed.
And that's like the size, that's the big size you can get for big hard
Mhm.
drives right now is terabyte hard drives. But
Mhm.
then the next one up, that's petabytes. Nobody's got
Yep.
that in their homes. I mean, you can.
Nah.
No.
So you can access the database. You can't
Yeah.
download it.
Yeah. Can I stream it to my iPod?
For 20, if you got 22 years, yes.
My iPod.
It's just the sound of neurons firing. It's just mouse YouTube. But when you look at it again,
Yeah.
you just watch a YouTube video. That's all it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So yeah, Francis Crick, he was among many things a eugenicist. So
Oh, boo!
yeah.
Okay, don't leave me on there saying that he was a good scientist, that maybe he was a good scientist, because I didn't know that.
Well, no, I mean you can't know everything, Maura. You can't be blamed for that.
It's true, but someone can soundbite me saying maybe Francis Crick was a good scientist and be like,
Yeah.
Nazi right over my face.
You're such a target for that too. Like,
I know, I know. I'm a woman on the internet. It's definitely going to happen at some point.
let's see if there's a.
Brains are fascinating, Logan. And I realized that we hadn't talked about them in a while, partly because I could just do a whole podcast about brains. So I tend to I'm attracted to brain stories, and so I'll grab them. But this one, and it was like the first, usually I look through several different options before I pick one. This was the first one I saw. I was like, cool. And then I was like, that's it. That's the one I'm doing. So
I
yeah, it's so cool.
I wanted to do a. I still have like ambitions maybe one day to do this podcast, but I thought about an idea of a podcast once that had to do with brains and learning. Basically, it would be like a limited series about brains, and it would talk about all the different things that are all the different parts of our brain and what they do, and it would be a storytelling type pod. Like it would be science through storytelling, right? Um, but the as far as I got with developing the idea, I didn't get into any research yet, but the whole concept I had was, what if you could tell the story of the different parts of the brain and what they do through either maybe either or both of walking through the history of the evolution of the brain or the development of the brain in humans, like as we develop.
Oh, that's really cool.
So like if you went through the evolution, the idea would be like, what parts of the brain evolved first, and then talk about that. Why is this the first part of the brain that evolved, and then the next parts that popped up. Like why were they involved, and what do they do, and how do they help, and all this kind of stuff. Or you could talk about how the brain grows and why. Those are both
Mm,
those two
mm.
stories though. Those two approaches are very similar because as I was about to say as we know, but maybe a lot of people don't know this. A lot of times, the way that like an infant or an embryo, and then what is it called after an embryo?
Fetus?
A fetus. Yeah, the way the morphology of a fetus develops, um, runs a lot of times along evolutionary lines, like in the order that things evolved.
Oh,
There's some
interesting.
connection there,
Okay.
like these parts evolve, like develop
And before
first, and
your cortex.
yeah. So,
Interesting. That's
but
interesting.
that's as far as I got with concept.
Logan says, I thought there were criticisms of the triune theory of the brain in terms of how they evolved. Is that a real thing still? I think, do you mean like lizard brain or hind brain and midbrain and forebrain kind of thing, Logan? That's like an old term I've heard before.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
I don't know much about that.
What
But
is
I do know, like, there's kind of a concept of lizard brain, or like your base brain, base, like all the function, fight and flight slash breathing, that there's a lot of, I think, pseudoscience out there about that. um yeah, that's what you meant. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's safe to say that anything you learned about the brain more than 5 years ago is probably up for debate at this point.
Yeah, I see.
And I think,
The theory is that it's is proposed by Paul MacLean, suggests that the human brain is composed of three distinct evolutionary layers: the reptilian brain, basal ganglia, the paleo mammalian brain, the limbic system, and the neo mammalian brain, the cortex.
Yeah, that does, it's definitely gonna be an oversimplification, I feel like,
Yeah.
the more you learn about brains. But
Sounds like
it's
one of those
interesting,
things.
like
Sounds like one of those things that would be a good model for thinking about the brain, but may not actually be the way things are or were or developed.
right, like, there might be some truth to it, but, I have a question, though, a more important question.
Yeah.
Tell me about your Guinness pouring process.
This is an old Guinness and it didn't do very well,
It didn't do its thing? Ah, too bad.
but I did pour it down the side of the glass and then
I think you're
towards.
supposed to go
Yeah, but I don't
s
know how you're supposed to properly do it. Um, so
like, upside down,
yeah,
and just drop it. It's the opposite of most beers.
yeah. So maybe that's why it did this. But
Perhaps.
it's been in the
Perhaps.
fridge for a
Also,
while. So
you had it in a bottle. The can is the better way
yeah,
because 'cause it's
this
got, like,
was
a little
someone brought
thingy.
this to the house and was like,
How's it taste? That's the real
"Tastes
question.
okay." I'm not a big stout drinker anymore, but it's here.
Uh,
You know, I used to
it's here.
love. Yeah, it's here. That's kind of my, you know, people. I used to get made fun of for like drinking Bud Light or Coors, and I'm like, I'm not picky about. I do like really nice beers and craft beers and all that kind of stuff, but like the beer I like is the one you give me, you know?
Fair,
Yeah.
fair. You know what? You're an easy house guest, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I am. I can enjoy any of it. Yeah.
I love it. Yes, Tweep, the visual auditory learner thing is one that is always bothers me a little bit because I work in education and people will be like, well, I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. And I'm like, that's not a real thing.
That's what you sing in your head, right?
In my head, yeah. I'm like, that's awesome. You like moving around. Maybe you learn better when you move around, but that's not really how it works.
Yeah,
We're not
those
really
learning
in a
style. Yeah,
category.
those learning styles,
Yeah,
not really a thing. Yeah, some of the teachers they still teach that I think in
they
some
do. Yeah.
school education stuff because some of the teachers I know that are at our school, which are fairly young, so you think
Hmm.
they just
Hmm.
learned this stuff. They talk about it too, like visual learners and kinesthetic learners, and I just don't say anything. I'm not there to
Yeah, yeah.
argue with the
No, you
teachers.
don't want to. And you know what too? I find, Logan, you make this point that the idea of brain of things being useful psychologically um is not always like something can be useful as a framework or structure, even if it's not 100% true. So like if that works and that makes you create these varied lesson plans and you get people moving and they see things and they listen, like there's lots of different things and you explain it
Right.
well, you're probably going to have a pretty successful class.
Right, because and this is that learning styles thing is a good example uh because while that framework while those that is not true about people having a preferred learning style, what is true is and the research has shown this is like you said getting kids moving around helps them learn.
Hmm.
But also research has shown that the more and varied ways that you present information makes it easier
Hmm.
to learn. So
Hmm.
it's not that you prefer one over the other, but being shown something in multiple different ways um, does engage different parts of the brain, which can help you learn it better. It's but
Totally,
yeah,
totally. Yeah.
but no, it's not like these people over here are visual learners and these ones are auditory learners, and it's
Yeah. No, it's not really a thing.
yeah.
So, anywho,
Yeah, we've got more science to talk about here.
yeah,
Not that we weren't
we're
just talking about science. I will let you know. So we have this. This is a little business behind the scenes. That email question that we keep pushing back. I'm just all I'm doing is throw. I don't want you to get nervous every time we get to the end of the notes and you're like, oh my god, we're gonna have to do this
You just
email
don't want to
question again.
forget about it.
It's just I keep tacking it on the end of our episodes so that it is not forgotten about.
You know what you could do is you could just do it as your news item next time.
It's not really news though. I like to
Yeah, I
keep a
guess.
news,
Fair, fair, fair.
rather than
Um, Well, maybe I'll do something really short and easy. I'll talk for like 5 minutes.
You know what? Actually, what we could do is every once in a while, when we don't have something to talk about at the top of the show, we could just do a quick email or a quick
Oh, yeah, we
listener
could. Yeah.
question.
That one's longer though.
This one actually isn't that long.
Oh,
Bobby
okay.
said,
Well,
always lying.
lies. We'll have to figure it out
Yeah, that's
for next time. But you got a whole
yeah.
feature.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
Maura, today I want to talk about the placebo effect.
Oh, you love talking about the placebo
I
effect.
do. In fact, we did a whole feature on this
You did.
once already back in episode 5.
You're kidding me. It was
Yeah.
episode 5?
Yeah, I looked it up. Episode 5
2020.
was
Oh my
about
gosh.
the placebo effect. So,
So funny. Like, there's so many of these that I'm like, oh, we've already done that. But since we did it 5 years ago,
I think
I
it's
feel
worth
like
revisiting. It's okay.
time. It's time. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I came up with this is because I recently read a paper exploring the effects of open label placebos for PMS symptoms. I saw it in the news, and I pulled up the British Medical Journal paper and read through it, and the paper, it discussed lots of things about testing so-called open label placebos for
What is an
treatment.
open label placebo?
Well, open label, and we'll get more into it, but an open label placebo is using a placebo openly, saying to the person, "This is
Just
a
doesn't do
placebo."
anything?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, openly explaining that this is a placebo and using that to treat something. And like I said, we'll get more into the details of that and maybe even the ethics of it. But
Mhm.
I covered this a little bit. I talked about this, by the way, a little Patreon plug. I did sort of like a hot take of this on one of our patron things.
Right.
And but I thought, this is worth digging into a little bit more and talking a little bit more about it on the show. So I wanted to talk about it. Open label or placebos are discussed a lot in the context of like being this mysterious effect that can somehow be harnessed. You've heard this before, like the harnessing of the placebo effect. It's a lot of
Mhm.
like mind over matter kind of talk.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted to talk about the placebo effect, what it is, and probably more importantly, what it isn't,
Sure.
and talk about how the placebo effect really is just a collection of well-defined biases and not a mysterious effect.
Ah, okay.
And that and then maybe we can have a discussion about the ethics of using placebos as treatment
Uh-huh.
afterwards
Uh-huh.
if we've got some time. But so first thing we should talk about is the study that inspired this talk, because I'm going to use that as kind of like our reference point for discussing the placebo effect. So this study was published in the British Medical Journal, and it was titled "Efficacy of Open Label Placebos for Premenstrual Syndrome: A Randomized Controlled Trial."
Okay.
And what it does is it explores the efficacy of so-called open-label placebos as a potential treatment. Open-label placebos. That word is so hard to say. Open-label placebos.
There's 3 L's, that's the problem.
Yeah, and multiple P's, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's tough. But open-label placebos, as I already said, are placebos that are given to patients with full transparency. And placebos, if in case you don't know, are inert substances that are used in medical research to act as control. So they don't do anything. They're designed to specifically not do anything.
Right.
Um,
It's just chalk.
yeah, or sugar tablets or something like
Mhm.
that. They're just they don't do anything.
Okay.
And so open label placebos are given to people with full transparency, telling them that they are placebos. Yes. I guess
Got it.
we should do a little bit of, just in case people don't know, of what PMS is really fast, since we're going to be talking about that. PMS is
Right.
short for premenstrual syndrome. It's a collection of symptoms experienced by people who have menstrual cycles, usually 1 to 2 weeks before menstruation starts, and then usually resolves within a few days after the first sign of a period. That's PMS. Symptoms include like depressed mood, irritability, mood swings, joint pain, bloating, abdominal pain and cramping, headaches. I'm starting to sound like a drug commercial.
Yeah, no, you're saying it too fast.
Yeah.
A drug commercial would say this very calmly
Yeah,
while
I'm
people
using a
skip
little
through a
bit too
field.
much affect, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
depressed mood, irritability, mood
Yeah,
swings.
there it is.
But what's interesting, and I didn't know this, is that the cause of PMS is actually not fully understood.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
Surprise! Oh,
Surprise!
another soapbox that
Something
Maura's
we
gonna get.
don't know yeah, about the menstrual cycle.
Yeah,
I can't believe science hasn't figured it out.
yeah.
Okay. Whew.
All right,
Continue.
got it out of your system.
Yeah, it's done.
So anyway, the motivation for this study is connected to the fact that it's not fully understood, and also that there are all these symptoms that can be uh, this range of symptoms, right?
Mhm.
Apparently, a lot of these symptoms can be very severe, and
Mm.
many of the treatments that exist for treating PMS symptoms have a lot of side effects.
Mm.
And in particular, some of the psychological
Yeah.
symptoms
Yeah.
for severe or moderate to severe depressed mood and mood swings and all the psychological symptoms. Sometimes SSRIs uh,
Yeah.
will be prescribed,
Prescribed, yeah.
and those can lead to tremors and nausea and all sorts of things. So the statistics are that apparently people who are given these treatments for moderate to severe PMS, 69% of patients discontinue treatment
Oh,
because
wow,
of,
that's pretty bad.
yeah, that is bad. So as you can imagine, then there's some motivation in the research to come up with some way, some
Uh-huh.
effective way to deal with these severe cases of these symptoms, right? It's also known that placebo does affect PMS symptoms,
Mhm.
and a lot of that is probably because all these symptoms are all subjective. Um, but anyway, we'll dig more into that in a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
So and then the final thing motivating this study is that it's ethically questionable to give placebos as a treatment, right? Because placebos historically have been understood to work through deception. um,
That's true, yeah.
and so it's ethically questionable to say, okay, if we know that placebo effect, seem to be placebo effects for these PMS symptoms, um, and then it's ethically questionable to give placebos as a treatment. Then how can we harness the power of placebo to give them openly to people? That's their
Mhm.
question. All right, that's
Mhm.
what motivated this study. So, methodology of the study that was done. I'll go through this really quickly because we'll need to understand how it was done and understand the results to sort of get into what was happening. So they recruited participants between March 2018 and December 2020. So over about a year and a half. Participants were 18 to 45 years old, um, and they recruited people specifically who had moderate to severe
Mm.
symptoms, or moderate to severe PMS or premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And they also required that people in the study had to have a regular menstrual cycle.
Okay.
That was probably more logistical reasons. They needed to be able to reliably be able to test whether these things were working. And then
Yeah, yeah.
and they also required that at least one that every participants had at least one impairing psychological or physical
Mm.
symptom. They
Mhm.
had to have at least one impairing symptom. Um,
So pretty severe
so
then.
we're talking about people who pretty severely experience
Yeah.
premenstrual syndrome symptoms. These people were all put into three groups. The first group just received standard treatment, right? And so we'll call that the standard group.
Okay.
Second group received open label placebos, which we already defined as being placebos that you were told it was a placebo.
Here's a sugar pill.
Yep. And so we'll call that the OLP negative, OLP being open label placebo. So that OLP negative group, and the reason we're calling it negative is in opposition to the third group, which is the third group was given open label placebos, but also given a treatment rationale. So they were explained, it was explained to them why open label placebos might be an effective treatment. Okay, so we call that the OLP plus group, right?
I see.
They were given open label placebos plus a rationale for why they should work. All right. So it's an interesting study design, right? Like,
yeah, that is interesting.
Looking standard treatments, open label placebos without a treatment rationale, and open label placebos with a treatment rationale. The results, would you like to hear them?
Yes, I would.
You don't have a choice. The research paper claims a 79.3% reduction in symptom severity from the OLP plus group. So open label placebos with treatment rationale, they claim that nearly 80% reduction in symptom severity.
Okay.
That is quite dramatic.
That is huge.
Yeah. The OLP
is that more than the standard treatment?
Yes. So the standard treatment was a 33% reduction only.
Okay.
So that's still quite a significant improvement. Even the OLP negative, just being given open label placebos, even they experienced a 50.4% reduction in symptom severity.
Okay.
So that's still pretty significant over standard treatment, which was again 33%, right?
It kind of sounds like treatment is making it worse. And I'm also curious as to why they didn't have a control group.
So the control group, these are all great questions, Maura. The control group was the standard treatment, really, because what they were testing is open label placebos. It's sort of like they're reversing the typical paradigm, right?
Right. Okay.
They want to know, do open label placebos work better than standard treatment? Or to be as generous as possible to them, they wanted to know if open label placebos worked differently than standard procedures.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And they found, according to their numbers, that the symptom severity was way less than if they gave them pills and told them they were placebos. Right? Now, I have a problem with this study design. I have a problem with the interpretation that these open label placebos are doing things.
Okay.
Can you, I don't know, what are your thoughts? Can you think of why I think that this is a problem to interpret this as open label placebos being an effective treatment?
It's hard for me to say. I kind of I can see your biases against this. Like you're not hiding the fact that you're annoyed by the study.
No, not at all.
So I feel like I'm not able to give like a clear picture.
Sure.
I will say one thing, however, and this is maybe better for discussion later, but just a note is that women's health, chronically understudied, all those things.
Yeah.
But what I really am uncertain about with this particular study is it sort of gives a little bit of credence to the idea that it's all in your head.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that.
Like the very fact that they're checking into this in this way, not just like a regular placebo effect, makes me question, like, is this something that the researchers believed is actually happening?
Yeah.
Or do they think PMS symptoms are all in your head? And because that's a thing that women are often told. So I again, I cannot make a claim for these researchers, But is there a bias there that's coming through is my question.
That's an interesting place to start because a lot of what we're talking about is pain, and pain is an interesting experience. It's an interesting physiological thing
Mhm.
because pain exists in this sort of like dual existence of being both actually physiological,
Mhm.
but also quite subjective.
Mhm.
Um, and so our experience of pain is different. We've evolved mechanisms, of course, to experience pain in order to warn us when something is happening to our bodies, and to be very be very difficult, like to be very jarring. Pain is there to say like, hey,
Yeah.
pay attention to this. Something is happening, right? But it's interesting because while it's very automatic and we don't have a lot of control over the initial experience of pain, we have the ability to suppress pain, um, consciously sometimes,
Mhm.
because while evolutionarily it's very important for us to be able to experience pain and be alerted of something happening, if it was so bad, like there are situations where you're in pain and you need to be able to quiet those pain feelings in order
Yeah.
to to be able to function, in order to eventually do something about it, maybe, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Or to get away from or to get away from or out of it. I mean, imagine if you step on, a sharp stick in the wilderness, and then you have a pain in your foot. If you had no way, and it like punctures your foot, if you had no way of being able to suppress the experience of that pain, it would be very difficult for you to get yourself out of that situation, right?
Yeah, and imagine I think a lot of people have had the experience where you have to do something through pain.
Yeah.
Like, your stomach hurts, but you have to talk in front of this group of people, like that it's something a little more minor than getting away from a bear, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the idea being, the reason I think that's an interesting thing to say at the outset is we talk about pain as being subjective, but I don't want to give the sense that that means it's all in your head, because it's not. But we do have the subjective experience, and we do have the ability. There are mechanisms in the brain, neurological mechanisms
Mhm.
for quieting pain. All right.
And there's a recent drug that I just talked about a little bit ago that does exactly that.
Yeah.
It just sort of like your pain sensors are triggered and, this drug just goes, "Nah,
Nope.
we're not doing
Yeah. Right.
that."
Right. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about. So let's dig into some of the problems I have with this study, and some of the criticisms, with it's not so much about the design of the study. I think the design is perfectly cromulent, right? Like there's nothing, like it's set up in an interesting way. It's really what interpretations people are taking from it that I have a problem with. So
Mhm.
when you're dealing with a placebo, anytime we're dealing with talking about placebo, we have to make sure we engage our skepticism quite well, right?
For sure, for
Because
sure.
when we're dealing with placebo, we're dealing with subjective symptoms, and there's a history and context around placebos, and people trying to use the idea of placebo to promote alternative uh, medicine and alternative therapies, right?
Mhm.
Again, I mentioned before this mind over matter idea. So
Mhm.
placebo, the idea of a placebo is co-opted by alternative medicine quite a lot. So we just always have to be aware of that when we're talking about it.
Fair, fair.
Um, and the nature of subjective symptoms is that they're notoriously difficult to measure objectively.
Yes, that's very true.
Very difficult. The example I thought of while I was writing up my notes for this was, imagine you have muscle pain in your shoulders, and somebody has a cream that they've said, like, this is a cream that we can apply
Mhm.
to shoulder muscles to relieve muscle pain in your shoulders. But the cream has to be like rubbed into the skin, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to test that, that would be difficult to tease apart whether the active ingredient in the cream was what was
Mm,
reducing your muscle pain, or whether it was the act of massaging it into
mm,
your shoulders, right? Like,
yeah.
so so it's difficult to tease those apart, and that's why we design studies in the way that we do. In order to tease that apart, we use placebo controls, right? You would study that by saying, okay, we've got two different creams. One of them has the active ingredient. One of them is exactly the same, looks, smells, and tastes exactly the same, but
Mhm.
it doesn't have the active ingredient in it. It's
Right.
just an
Right.
inert cream, and we will randomly assign people to get the two different ones. And so the
Mhm.
idea is that
Mhm.
you're everyone's still getting the massage, but only one of them is getting the actual medicine. And so then you look
Yes.
at, do we, after that, do we see an effect, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And when studies use placebos like this, we often find that the groups that don't have the placebo arm of those studies often get a benefit, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so that's where this idea of a placebo effect comes in. But that's often misunderstood as this quote placebo effect being quote real, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah. I guess because it's often subjective symptoms, if you feel actual relief, then it's better to massage inert cream into your shoulders than to not massage any cream. I think that's the idea, right?
right, right, yes, exactly, um, exactly, yeah, Th-
So it's real in that sense
yeah.
that something's happening.
It's real that yes, it's real that something is happening. It's not made up. It's not all in your head. Something is
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Um, but the placebo effect is not this. By giving it a name, it's almost like it's being misunderstood as being this magical thing. But the
It
placebo
in
effect,
itself is a treatment,
yeah, exactly. But the
but it's
placebo effect
not.
is just a name that we give to all the things that are
Mm,
happening in a
mm.
clinical trial that are not the thing being tested.
'Kay.
That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all that the placebo
Right, right.
is you've got the treatment and then
Mhm,
everything else that's happening. And that everything
mhm,
else is falls under the placebo, right?
mhm.
Um so one of the problems I have with this study is that placebos, first of all, placebos by nature are meant to be blinded. Um
Yeah, that's true.
and so I'm this might just be a technical problem that I have with this, but I'd argue that these open label placebos aren't really placebos at all
Hmm.
because you're telling people what you're doing, right? So it's maybe
Right,
a technical thing. Maybe I'd be happier with that if they were
right.
calling it something else. But it feels like that what they're testing is not open label placebos. What they're actually testing is whether or not patients can be biased into reducing their subjective symptoms,
Mm.
right? Which we already know is true, Maura. We already know that we
Right,
can influence people
right,
into experiencing their subjective symptoms differently. So what is this actually testing that we don't already know,
right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So what do I think? So they did measure significant results.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So what
clearly.
do I think is going on here then if I don't think that like open label placebos are actually doing anything? Um, So there's a couple of things that we do know about placebos, the placebo, like what the quote unquote placebo effect is, and as I kind of implied already, what the placebo effect is just it's a collection of a bunch of biases that we already know about, and we lots of these things are going on whenever you see a placebo effect. One of them is
Yeah.
the white coat bias. Have you heard of the white coat bias before?
Right, like, when a scientist comes in a room, you want them to think that you did it right.
Yeah, so
Like,
that's a little bit different. That's actually that's another one that I was going to talk about for sure.
"Oh, yeah?
But let's talk about it. Yeah, that's I call that the social desirability bias,
Okay."
or the good participant bias is what you're talking about. Which is yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
whenever people are part of a clinical trial, they often have this desire to be a good participant, right?
Mhm,
They
mhm.
want to please the authority figure that is running this experiment,
Right,
and so
exactly.
they have a tendency to sometimes report beneficial effects, because they have this idea. The participants, again, unconsciously, subconsciously, without knowing it, that they're doing this, they have this idea in their heads of what they think that the people running the study want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And without trying, you're going to have a tendency to try to report those things when you see them. And maybe
Yeah,
also have a tendency to underreport things that you think that they don't want to see, right?
it's that we're social animals. We
Yeah.
want approval from people around us, so we totally makes sense that we do
Yeah,
that.
so that happens. And we know that that happens, and that's why it's all part of the placebo arm of the trial, right? Like it falls under these things, and we try to account for that. There's also, so the white coat bias that I was talking about is so in the OLP minus group, they were given detailed instructions on how and when to use the placebos,
Mm.
right? And they were even told to send the extra pills back. So what that
Oh.
does is it lends a sort of sense of authority on the
Mm.
expectation and effectiveness of
Mm-hmm.
open label placebos.
Wow.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like yes, you're being told it's a placebo, but you're also being told the white coat bias, meaning that the name comes from the sense that whenever a doctor comes in the room wearing their official, important, authoritative white coat,
Yeah.
it has some sort of bias beneficial effect on people because they're an important doctor who's able to do doctor things, right?
Yes, they're reassured
Yeah, yeah.
or alternatively afraid,
So that's
depending on their experience with doctors.
right. Well, definitely true. And so I think there's
Yeah.
a little bit of that could be going on here too, right? If you tell people these are placebos, but also you need to make sure you take them this at this time and at this
Mm,
time.
mm,
Make sure you always take them with a meal. If you have
mhm,
extras at the end of the study that you didn't take, that's okay. Please make sure to send those back.
mhm, mhm.
It makes it feel like these are really important pills. Like
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
they are doing something, you know? So you get this
Yeah, so
idea in your head.
interesting, yeah.
That leads into another bias, like the expectation bias. So the OLP plus group, the one that were told, given some rationale for how the placebos might work, they were told a bunch of reasons why the placebo effect has been scientifically shown to work. I read the
Mm,
scripts that they used, and so
okay.
they were told all these reasons why, like a whole list of reasons told scientifically they're shown to be effective, especially with premenstrual syndrome symptoms. And they
Mhm.
were told all about this, right? And so, and they were even told that the placebo effect would work even if they doubted it would work. Um,
Oh,
which there has been studies that have shown that. But what you're doing, I feel like, is you're priming people to believe that it works. And we know that this is the expectation bias. If you have the expectation that this is going to work,
Mhm,
it's going to have an influence on at least how you perceive your symptoms going forward.
mhm,
Remember, these are all
mhm.
subjective symptoms, so we have the ability to sort of like ignore pain, um, ignore how maybe rate things as less severe as maybe
Mm,
that you
mm.
would have otherwise rated them, stuff like that.
So they have a lot of things to control for here is what you're
Yeah.
saying. That and it sounds like they didn't do that if they had so dramatic an effect.
So they did control for it. So again, the
Okay.
study design is not necessarily my problem. My
Gotcha, okay.
problem is what they're saying the results mean. And
Mm.
what a lot of
Mm.
places reporting it are saying that the results mean. Um, so the last problem, and then we can maybe talk a little bit more about what I just said. The last problem I have is that, and this maybe is a part of is actually a problem I have with the design of the study itself. Maybe the main or only problem I have with the design of the study. The types of people in the study that they selected, I think, were probably primed to show a larger effect because they were only choosing people who were suffering from moderate to severe symptoms,
Right.
and had at least one severe impairing system. These are people that have
Mhm.
probably been dealing with these symptoms for a number of years, if not decades,
Mhm.
um, probably desperate for something to work because they've probably tried things and maybe they didn't work.
See
So
that see, that's my other question. Did they control for people who had already undergone standard treatments?
it
Because
didn't say that they did. No.
yeah, that's would a new treatment have a tendency to work better no matter what the treatment was? Is that
Right.
also another thing that can happen?
Sure. It all depends on the individual's interpretations, right? Like if they and that's what I mean. Like the types of people who have tried so many things and really just are looking for something that can work, they're just like on average, those people are probably going to be. You're going to have a lot of people in that group who who are ready and primed for anything to work, right? They
Mm-hmm.
want something to work, and so their tendency to believe these things might be higher. Is my thought, and so I think they could
Yeah,
have
yeah.
done better if they just opened it up to people, to anybody who experiences PMS, right? Um,
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
to see if those, and again, I think part of this problem is that, and is that by choosing these people, I think they were just wanted to be able to more easily see the effects. That's why they're looking for people with moderate to severe symptoms. But that
Yeah,
again
yeah.
is sort of like you're sort of like juicing the results, right? Like
You're
you're
priming the pump for yourself a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah. It's I would have felt better about the whole thing. I really would like to see this same thing done, but with anybody who experiences these
Mhm.
symptoms, not
Mhm.
just severe, not just moderate to severe.
Interesting. Yeah.
So 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 the so to sort of like tie a ribbon around what the placebo effect is, like I said, it's not a single effect, it's a collection of a bunch of different effects. um, it's everything that happens in a clinical trial that's not the active treatment that you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
uh, and uh, and it can be the result of, there's actually, I sort of talked about it a little bit already. There's one of the things that accounts for the placebo effect a lot of times is something called the clinical trial effect,
Huh.
which is just
I
by,
think I've heard of that one.
yeah, well, yeah, because, and this is well studied, just just by being in a clinical trial, you
Mm.
will see improvement of your symptoms,
Mm.
especially subjective systems. And it's because when you're in a clinical trial, what happens? You're getting regular doctor visits, you're getting regular exams, you're being seen by a physician. And the reason
Mhm.
is because these people who are in clinical trials, ethically, they cannot be denied standard of care, right?
Yeah. Right?
So
Yeah.
so they're getting standard of care treatment along with these clinical trials, which they might not have been getting before.
That's true.
And it turns out the standard of care is called the standard of care because it's pretty good. And so they're just trying to give everybody that standard of care that's in the clinical trials so that they can just be looking at whether the treatment group is getting an extra benefit.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
that stuff is happening, right? And also by being in a clinical trial, you just behave better. You pay more attention to your health, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and people pay more attention to their symptoms and all that kind of stuff. This study, it only looks at subjective measures,
Right.
right? And so if you really wanted to test the placebo effect, you'd want to look at objective measures as well, like blood pressure, temperature, stuff like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess because then you'd be able to compare what, like, the person says with what their body is
Yeah.
physically doing and see.
Yeah. And let me tell you, Maura,
Yeah.
that's been done before. All
Oh,
right.
well, I'm sure it has.
Yeah,
Yes.
it has been done. There's famously in the literature, um, there's an asthma study that did this, looked at the effects of placebo on objective versus subjective
Mhm.
symptoms. And so what they did was they looked at four groups. They had a proven asthma treatment, like people who suffer from asthma were given a proven asthma treatment. They were given
Mhm.
placebo. They were given acupuncture, or they were given no treatment at all. So it was looking
Mhm.
at these four groups. It was actually a pretty clever design. So because in order to look at placebo and to see its effect, they also wanted to compare it against acupuncture, basically a sham treatment they were being treated, but not by anything that was actually going to do anything.
Right. Right.
Something well known to not work.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was they measured the outcomes. The outcomes that they measured were, did you feel better? Did your asthma feel better? And then they also measured their objective pulmonary function. Did that get better?
Mm.
And the researchers were hoping that the placebo effect would have a real objective effect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what these researchers, it was actually a study that was done by people kind of hoping to support this idea that placebo is a real quote unquote effect, right?
Because wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. And the results were that the real treatment, but the placebo treatment and the acupuncture treatment, all of them said that they felt better. They said that they felt better, but the only group to have an objective improvement was the real treatment group.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was sort of like this is clear evidence that the placebo effect is not actually doing, it's not, there's nothing happening here, right? It's just people's subjective experience of
it.
Which, yeah. That gets into...
I mean, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
The subjective experience of disease, though, does matter.
Yes,
I would say,
but not in the way. But not in the way that people want to claim that it matters. You have people out there who are saying the placebo effect is real, and then try to say that that's all you need to treat your cancer.
Oh boy. Well, that is definitely not where we want to go with that.
Right.
But if you have, let's say you are going through cancer treatment, and the gravel knocks you out, and you find some, I don't know, sugar pill that helps your nausea go away after your chemo treatments. That seems like a good use of the placebo effect.
Well, that gets into an ethical discussion, right? And that's where I kind of wanted to end this, so we can take this as far as we want. Which is, do you think? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here yet. I don't know where I stand with it, but do you think that people should be given a sugar pill? Because I think I feel pretty strongly that deceiving people by telling them that it's something else and just giving them a sugar pill, that's ethically wrong. I don't know where you stand on that, but like let's use your example of reducing nausea. Yeah,
pretending
and
this
giving
is real
someone
medicine.
a sugar pill and saying, this is a real anti-nausea medication. Take it.
Well, that's super unethical.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we can agree on that. But what about the ethics of open label placebos? Openly telling someone, this is a placebo. Here, it has no active ingredients. Here, take this to reduce your nausea. Like, how do you feel about that?
I don't think that I think that could do harm. So I would say no, a medical practitioner should not advocate for that, because you have a lot less control in that case over the outcome of the patient's health. And you are leaving it up to essentially chance that they will be able, that the effect will take place.
Yeah.
Whereas the other things, we have some physiological reasons for them to work. However, I think if somebody makes that choice for themselves, knowing, I don't know if this will work, but whatever, this vitamin C is harmless and it kind of has a citrusy taste, and that sort of helps. Like that kind of thing, I feel, live your life. You're not going to harm anyone if you personally decide to do that. But I don't think that a clinician should advocate for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of close to where I stand on it, because I think a lot of times people say, well, patients can choose for themselves. If you just tell them, they can choose for themselves. But I don't know, and I hesitate to say this only because it's going to make me sound like I'm talking down to people, which I'm not. But I think I think when you say patients can choose for themselves, tell them that it's a placebo and they can choose for themselves, you're relying a lot on whether those people uh, properly understand what it is, right?
I think, yeah, that's a fair point because you're gonna get people with different thoughts on it.
And levels of
Let me back
education
up. Let me
about
back up though.
placebo and medicine and everything.
Exactly, exactly. Again, I don't think that should ever take place in a clinician's office.
Okay.
Like, no
Yeah.
one should be
Yeah.
like, if you
Well,
take
you
this,
made
it'll
that
probably
clear.
have the placebo effect, but I won't prescribe it. What I mean is, if you walk out the door and you're like, I hate the feeling of gravel, I'm gonna try this vitamin C.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you personally are
Yeah.
like,
That's
okay,
fine.
I'm gonna give it a try.
And I agree with you there. Like
Yeah.
the ethical part of it to me is whether a physician is recommending it or suggesting it or someone.
This actually kind of happened to me when I gave birth the first time. The nurse that was in the room with me was very biased against using pain medicine. And so she was like well, some people can do this, this, or this, like they'll take a shower or they'll try to rub their belly, or I can't even remember what she said. And I was looking at her like, lady, uh, I don't think a shower's gonna cut it.
Sure. Sure.
We are way out of shower territory right now
Yeah.
because I just threw up in this container. So please, please stick that needle in my back. Thank you very much. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was not, there's no, she was trying to get me to, that's what that would be, a placebo effect, distracting you from the pain.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you want to do that, go for it. But like, no, I do not want to take a shower.
Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah, give me the epidural, woman. Yes, that's what I was saying. Palmer
Yeah.
in the chat, all caps. Okay, can I add in one other piece here that I think could make this an interesting study and could change the relationship a little bit. So you know how there's a placebo effect, but there's also the nocebo effect,
Yeah.
which is when uh an effect, something happens that causes you to feel more symptoms, and or to increase your subjective sense of pain, suffering, nausea, whatever.
Yeah.
um that is also something I would be very surprised to find out that the nocebo effect has zero effect on PMS and PMDD, because getting a period, bleeding out of your vagina, is in itself an effect you can see. And I feel like, especially knowing when you have a regular cycle, knowing that it's coming
Mm-hmm.
in itself is a nocebo effect.
Sure, because of the expectation that you're about to experience these
Yeah,
symptoms.
yeah. So you're gonna be like, okay, I know I'm 3 days away. You have that dread, you have that worry, it adds all this anxiety.
Yeah.
You're hyper aware of your own feelings within your body because you know it's coming.
Right.
So wouldn't it be interesting if, instead of having a study of this on people with regular cycles, you do it on people with irregular cycles only? Because then you have a diminished, the nocebo effect wouldn't be quite as strong because you can't
That's
predict
interesting.
it.
Yeah, that's
And then
interesting.
you'd be able to see, like, okay, well, I know now. I know why they would do it, because it helps to kind of,
Right.
it helps control it. It's one factor that you can't control, because if you get somebody with a regular period, you have no idea. Like, is it
Right.
a
Yeah.
40 day? Is it 29 days? Is it 13 days? It can be totally off the wall. And that's very difficult to really tease out individual effects. But I feel like that nocebo effect, it sounds like, from what you're telling me, it was largely ignored in this study.
Yeah, well,
Like,
it
there's
just
no,
wasn't what they were looking at. No. So,
but I think it's significant though,
yeah.
because i- it's not gonna, I don't know, I feel like if you could actually take away the menstruation part,
Mhm.
that would be very interesting. Obviously, that's not gonna happen because that's
Sure,
the
sure.
part that causes it. But, like, if you could actually remove, like, the ability to know whether or not you were actually menstruating based on, like, seeing blood, I wonder what the effect that would have. Or,
Yeah,
like, not able to measure the time, like, you don't have that anticipation.
yeah. I mean, that's true, but I guess the I like both groups in this particular study, all the groups would have experienced that equally. So, um,
Yeah, I suppose.
because it
Um,
wasn't being controlled for.
maybe in this study it wouldn't have made much of a difference, but I would be curious because it has to have some kind of an effect. I think it would
Yeah,
allow you to at least see kind of the extent of the effect of that nocebo effect. But maybe I'm thinking of a totally different study that could be done, not necessarily this one.
yeah, yeah. So, but the main to sum it up, I think the thing that annoyed me the most about what was going on here was the interpretation that we that they were the idea that they were that giving that you should be able to somehow package this open label placebo idea
Got it.
um, in order to do what they're really looking at. It feels like to me, and what really was being studied, and maybe even the value of the research is that that they were clearly showing that if you give people an expectation of benefit,
Mm,
then they're going to experience a benefit when it comes to subjective symptoms, right?
mhm,
So, so can we somehow use that knowledge to help,
mm,
you
mm.
know, increase the benefit of actual treatments? That's part of where the ethics come in to me
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like if we can do this with a placebo, why wouldn't we just also do this but with actual medicine? you know um
Mm,
like
mm.
like that's the ethical question to me.
Yeah,
you know
yeah. Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, you do want to reduce suffering as much as possible.
yeah,
So the results of this study really do kind of make you sit up and pay attention. If from at face value you can reduce 80% of symptoms with a placebo, maybe I could see why they'd be talking about open label placebos.
yeah,
I don't know. There's so many questions about it and lots of good comments.
yeah, definitely.
Um, I wanted to say, okay, Jamie asked if this could be done on any group like those with severe headaches. Um, I feel like yeah. I feel like you could.
Yeah, anybody who experiences
A subjective symptom.
like subjective symptoms, yeah, you could do this with.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't see why not. Uh, Yeah. But it depends, I guess, on the symptom too. You'd want to kind of have that would be interesting also because severe headache can be it's one symptom, but it could have many causes.
Yeah,
Whereas with PMS, it's multiple symptoms with a single cause. Well, unknown, but like related to one single effect. So I wonder if you would see a difference because between certain causes of headaches. So if you have headaches because of like subdural pressure versus you sometimes clench your jaw at night, like those are very different causes, and one might have, might get a placebo effect and one might not. So that would be, you'd have to get people with headaches for the same reason. is my very long-winded answer
Yeah.
to that question, Jamie.
Yeah, that's true though. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't read all of it, but we had someone in the chat. I don't know if they're still there. Bear was talking about neuropathic pain and to answer your question, we're just science enthusiasts. We're and who do a lot of reading these papers. We're not practitioners
We don't do research.
or scientific researchers either, really. So our knowledge of this stuff is necessarily limited. But neuropathic pain, I do know is pain. Hopefully, I get this right. Neuropathic pain is pain where you like the brain is misinterpreting sort of signals, and it's generating pain by misinterpreting certain signals, and so, but that's not. I don't. It's from what I understand, neuropathic pain still is considered actual because pain, the experience of pain is necessarily generated by the brain, right? So
okay, sorry, just you're saying neuropathic. What he wrote was neuroplastic.
Neuroplastic. I'm saying neuropathic,
it's the same,
but I mean neuroplastic.
I think you mean the same thing, because I think neuropathic pain is like there's
fibromyalgia,
like inflammation in your nerves kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, neuroplastic. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, neuroplastic pain is like your brain is generating the sensation of pain, and misinterpreting some kind of signals or something like that. But that's still real pain. But I bet that I wouldn't be surprised to hear that there were therapies that you could do, like, and when I say therapy, I mean like psychological therapies, ways of training yourself to experience that pain less. Because Bear also said that and probably has to do with this neuroplastic pain idea, that there's a clear mind-body connection. I feel like it's tricky when you talk about mind-body connection because so many people want to co-opt that idea to mean something more mystical than it really is, right? Yes, clearly there is a mind-body connection, especially when it comes to the experience of pain, because pain is a sensation that our brain is generating. Like any sensation, any perception of sensation is generated by your brain, as a result of actual physiological sensation that we're experiencing. So you experience pain, but then it goes through a series of neural pathway that ends up generating this experience that you have, right? Now, I know that sometimes the experience that we have of pain, it doesn't actually go through the brain. It goes through maybe the spinal cord or the brain stem or something like that. It doesn't actually make it into the brain and process, but still there's a sensation that's being generated, and neuroplastic pain is part of that. So the point I'm making, this is my long-winded explanation.
There you go.
Is that yes, I do think that there is a mind-body connection, but you have to be. I like to be very careful about how I phrase that because the fact that it's been co-opted so many times,
Yeah, it's funny too because I feel like that and I'm gonna get a little philosophical. I think
not allowed.
I don't really believe I don't really believe in mind-body duality to start with. So saying there's a mind-body connection to me is fundamentally true because your mind is your body and your body is your mind. There's no separation.
That's a good way
the way I think about it.
Explain the way that I feel about it as well. Yeah.
And I think too that if you think that way, there actually is no such thing as subjectivity and objectivity because you are physically experiencing what you're physically experiencing. The subjectivity comes when you try to express it to someone else.
Yeah, that is.
My nerves are firing how they're firing, right? Like I'm that's objectively happening. It's a physical thing. The way I explain it, the way I I process and feel it and am able to express it to the rest of the world, that's where it starts to it's going through another filter that can't really be well compared. If I could take my brain in pain and put it under a microscope like the mouse in the previous thing that I talked about, you could see the pain happening.
Yeah.
It would be objective. We just don't have that technology. Honestly,
Yeah.
everything's subjective. Everything is objective. You just don't have the ability to see it. In my view of the universe,
Yeah,
again, philosophical,
but I
that's
do
yeah.
think that that is sort of a semantic difference. Like what if you I think you have to first
You think so?
agree. I think you have to first agree that 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 there's no such thing as dualism. Like you have to agree on that philosophical
Yeah, yeah,
basis,
yeah.
right? But
Fair, fair, fair.
once you've agreed that 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 there is not a spiritual and physical.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
uh,
I'm saying
I'm using the
mind and
wrong word.
body.
I'm using the wrong
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yeah. Once you agree that there's no mind body duality, then I think the difference of subjective and objective is just what you're talking about is a semantic difference, because I think most people would, like philosophers even who talk about philosophy of the mind or philosophy of like experience and stuff like that, would define this subjective experience as being this like qualia idea, right? This idea of qualitative experience of our conscious experience, right? Like the brain
Mm.
constructs our consciousness. The brain, yes, it does,
Mhm.
but the way that our brain is constructing this experience for us, that's what we call subjectivity, right?
I suppose that's true. I guess you're right. Maybe I am being semantic.
But no, but your point is a valid point that that um that we are all, like, it is all physical. It is all in the hardware somewhere, you know. But
Yeah, I guess too. Because I'm primed by this fact that we were able to look at this tiny bit of brain and understand and see connections and process them and like map them out. We're never going to be able to do that for everybody's brain all the time, always.
yeah,
But wouldn't that be so interesting to know what are the exact things that are firing at what time and why and what's making you so depressed in this
right,
certain time when your
right.
hormones hit this like if we had perfect knowledge, nothing would be subjective, but of course here we are.
And don't
um
apologize, Bear. You might
oh
not
yeah.
have been to any of our recordings before. We're in the interstitial part of the between segments right now.
Yes.
Where we take these diversions. So we're happy to do it. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and then Tweep says this gets into the topic of do we have free will? Yes, the final destination of every philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that we have time for because it's late.
No.
So
I've thought about really. I've thought about doing a feature on the evidence or lack thereof of free will, like what we know and what we don't know, and
Mhm, mhm.
and but I feel like it would take so much for me to learn to be able to talk about it confidently, because it's such a
Maybe we need to do another fireside chat
yeah. Or I
with
want to,
somebody
like,
who does know.
maybe that's the perfect person, like perfect guest to like reason to have a guest on the show, someone who really is
Mhm,
in
mhm.
this like really scientific understanding of 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 and who has more of a that kind of a approach to the philosophy,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
to talk about free will, because I have so many questions, like I know what
Yeah,
I know what
yeah.
I feel, but I don't know that I can back that up with a lot of evidence.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, well, it is getting late.
It is indeed.
Let's get this show on the road.
Let's get the show off the road.
That's what I mean. let's let's pull this show over.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know where to go with the outro now that I feel like we exhausted every outro possibility.
Hold on. I might have something. This might not go anywhere. Don't get excited.
Oh boy.
But I have to look at something to see if I have something.
Answer one question, ask 12 more. Our answer is always more research must be done. We'll never have all the answers. C'est la vie. That's why we have this podcast. If we had all the answers, if there was no such thing as subjectivity, then we would have nothing to talk about.
I got nothing. I told you don't get excited. It might not turn out to be anything.
Well, my vamping also didn't produce much, so maybe let's talk about Vegas and the live show.
Yeah, we'll just do one last quick reminder and then we'll leave. Right.
Bobby, it is just a few short days away. You and I on April 28th will be in Vegas doing a live show in person on a stage. Is it a stage? Behind a table.
Yeah, behind a table. There's no stage, but we do have a room with lots of chairs and some microphones will be set up and we'll be.
And I hope some people come.
That's your cue. If you're listening here and you're going to be in Vegas at the TMS Vegas event that we've talked about a few times on these live shows or on the shows in general. If you're going to be there on Monday morning, the 28th of April, then we'll be there. Show up at 10. We're going to start at 10:30 officially recording the show, and we've got things to talk about. I've got to prepare.
Me too.
I've got preparing to do.
Yes, I do as well.
Yeah, we're going to have some ways for the audience to participate in some demonstrations about stuff that we're going to talk about. So I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited just to see some people and hang out. I'm mostly excited to record this record an episode with Maura sitting side by side, and that'll be fun. But we're gonna,
it being in person has there's a timing magic, that happens that you can't get over the internet. So it'll be interesting. I wonder because we're gonna record it and release it eventually.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there'll be a difference in feel.
Yeah, I bet there will be.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm very excited about it. But for now, that's going to be it for this episode of All Around Science. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you've got questions or feedback, you can email us at contact@allaroundscience.com.
We're on socials at All Around Sci or All Around Science.
My name's Bobby.
I'm Maura.
And we'll see you next week for some more science stuff. But right now,
we're not planning to do a live stream, Jamie, of the Vegas show.
We're not going to live stream that one. Nope.
We don't have that technology.
I mean, the technology exists.
It's more about setup and it's not impossible to do.
Yeah.
But we are small and mighty, small but mighty. So
yeah, it's just it would be extra cogs in the thing that would have to be lined up in. But we are going to record it.
Scientists have we're writing our cold open. That's why we stopped talking and I started singing because I'm uncomfortable with silence. Ready?
I'm ready. On today's episode.
Okay, do it again.
Got it. On today's episode,
scientists mapped out 500 million connections in a section of brain the size of a grain of sand.
And can you treat PMS with placebos? Some scientists tried to find out.
All that and more today on All Around Science. All that and way more.
Way, way, way more.
We went for a while. We were chatty today.
Yeah.
I am mad.
Me neither. Me neither.
Okay, well, yeah. Thanks everybody. Oh, Tweep is offering to video our live show in Vegas.
I'm not gonna
So we'll have
stop you,
to.
I guess.
It's gonna be you with your phone. Yeah, much appreciated. I guess you could live tweet Periscope, Vine. I'm just picking outdated, non-existent social media platforms now.
Yeah, we're not making you sign
It'd be
an
funny if
NDA
someone
or
live
anything.
tweeted our show.
That would be.
I think that would be funny. I think there's like gonna be like not many a handful of others who will be privy to that information. But anyway, thanks everyone. It was so great to see some new names in the chat.
Yep, definitely.
Palmer, Nick, Bear, Jamie, Tweep, of course. We had Logan and who else left a little bit earlier? Cyrenex left a little bit earlier. So yeah, so great to see you all.
But right now, I'm going to bed. So
yes,
I'm turning off the stream. Thank you everybody for hanging out, and we'll see you next time we do one next month. Bye bye.
Bye folks.